Do you ever feel like people just don't do what you want them to? No matter how many times you ask them or how nicely you try to explain it, they just don't seem to get it? Well, there's a reason for that. Being able to make someone do exactly what you want is actually a skill that not many people have. It's called the art of persuasion. If you develop this skill, you'll be able to get people to do exactly what you want without them even realizing it. You'll be able to get them to say yes to your requests and make them feel good about doing them. Make sure to pay close attention to the following 8 techniques, and you'll be well on your way to becoming a master of persuasion. Just remember to use these powerful psychological techniques for good and not to manipulate people for your own personal gain. Click the like button, subscribe, and let's get started. Before we dive into the meat of how to persuade someone, it's important that we understand the different types. There are 3 main types of persuasion. Authoritative persuasion. This is when you use your position of power to influence someone. For example, a boss telling an employee to do something. Logical persuasion. This is when you use facts and logic to influence someone. For example, convincing someone to vote for a certain candidate because of their policies. Emotional persuasion. This is when you use emotion to influence someone. For example, telling a sad story to get a stranger to make a donation or buy a product because it's for a good cause. As you can see, there are different types of persuasion, and each type is more effective in certain situations than others. So what's the best way to persuade someone? The answer is a mix of all 3 types. The most persuasive people are those who can adapt their style to the situation and use a mix of all 3 types. They're not afraid to flex their authoritative muscles when necessary, but they also know how to appeal to someone's emotions and use logic when it's more effective. Now that we've gone over the different types of persuasion, let's take a look at some specific techniques you can use to persuade someone. Number 1. The foot in the door technique. Have you ever had someone ask you to do something small and then, once you said yes, they asked you to do something bigger? That's called the foot in the door technique, and it's a powerful way to get someone to say yes to your requests. The idea behind this technique is that it's easier to get someone to agree to a small request than to a big one. Once they've said yes to the small request, they're more likely to say yes to the big request because they don't want to seem inconsistent. For example, let's say you're trying to get a friend to come to your party. You could start by asking them if they're free that day. If they say no, then you know they're not available and there's no point in asking them to come to your party. But if they say yes, then you can follow up with a request to come to your party. You could say something like, "Great, I'm so glad you're free. Would you be interested in coming to my party?" Chances are they'll say yes because they don't want to seem rude after you've already asked them if they're free. And even if they weren't interested in coming to your party, they might change their mind after hearing more about it. Number 2. The door in the face technique. The door in the face technique is the opposite of the foot in the door technique. With this technique, you start by asking for a big favor and then follow up with a smaller one. For example, let's say you're trying to get your boss to give you a raise. You could start by asking for a 15% raise, and then when they say no, you can follow up with a request for a smaller raise. The idea behind this technique is that it's easier to get someone to agree to a small request after they've already said no to the big one. They don't want to seem like they're not willing to negotiate, so they're more likely to agree to your smaller request. Number 3. The scarcity technique. The scarcity technique is a way to make someone want something by making it seem rare or like there's a limited supply. For example, let's say you're trying to sell tickets to your event. You could say something like, "Tickets are selling fast, so don't wait too long or you'll miss your chance." This will make people want to buy tickets right away so they don't miss out. The idea behind this technique is that people are more likely to want something if they think it's rare or in high demand. And once they've made up their mind, they're less likely to change it because they don't want to lose out on the opportunity. This can be used not only for sales, but also for dating and even job interviews. For example, if you're interviewing for a job, you could say something like, "I've been getting a lot of interest from other companies, so I need to make a decision soon." This will make the company want to hire you right away so they don't lose out on the opportunity. Number 4. The Principle of Reciprocity. The principle of reciprocity is the idea that people are more likely to do something for you if you've done something for them first. For example, let's say you're trying to get a friend to do you a favor. You could start by doing them a favor and then follow up with your request. This is a powerful technique because it's based on the idea that people want to repay you for your kindness. And even if they weren't planning on doing you a favor, they might change their mind after you've done something for them first. You can use this technique for all sorts of situations. When you're trying to get a favor, when you're trying to sell something, or even when you're trying to get a date. Number 5. The Principle of Liking and Similarity. Studies have shown that people are more likely to say yes to a request if they like the person who's asking. And not only that, but they're also more likely to say yes if they think the person is similar to them. For example, let's say you're trying to get a date with someone. You could start by finding out what you have in common and then using that to your advantage. This technique is based on the idea that people are more likely to like someone who is similar to them. And once they like you, they're more likely to say yes to your requests. You can use this technique by finding things you have in common with the person you're talking to, and then using them to your advantage. Number 6. The Authority Technique. The authority technique is a way to get someone to do what you want by using the power of authority. In a study conducted by Stanley Milgram, it was found that people are more likely to obey authority figures even when they're asked to do something that goes against their moral code. For example, you can use this technique by asking a person in a position of authority to make a request on your behalf. This could be your boss, your teacher, or even your parents. The idea behind this technique is that people are more likely to obey authority figures. And even if they don't want to do what you're asking, they might change their mind if someone in a position of authority asks them to. Number 7. The Lowball Technique. The lowball technique is a way to get someone to agree to a request by starting with a low offer and then increasing the offer until they agree. For example, let's say you're trying to buy a car from a dealership. You could start by offering them $15,000 for the car, and then when they say no, you can increase your offer until they agree. The idea behind this technique is that it's easier to get someone to agree to a request when they think they're getting a good deal. And once they've agreed to the request, it's harder for them to back out because they don't want to seem like they're not committed. This technique is often used in sales and negotiation. Number 8. The Pathos Technique. This is a way to make someone want something by making them feel an emotional connection to it. In other words, you're simply trying to evoke an emotional response. For example, let's say you're trying to sell a product. You could use pathos by telling a story about how the product has helped someone in the past. This technique is based on the idea that people are more likely to want something if they feel an emotional connection to it. And even if they weren't planning on buying the product, they might change their mind after hearing the story. In fact, most of our decisions are based on our emotions rather than logic. So if you can evoke an emotional response, you're more likely to get what you want. As you can see, there are a number of ways to make someone do what you want. And while some of these techniques might seem manipulative, they're actually based on psychological principles that have been proven to work. It's simply a matter of using these techniques in the right way. If you use them ethically and for the right reasons, then you'll be able to get what you want without harming anyone in the process. Tell us in the comments below which of these techniques you're going to start using, and if you have any other suggestions, be sure to share them as well. Now, to expand your knowledge even more, click on the video that you see on the screen right now. It will show you how to make people like you without saying a word. Make sure to watch it now. If you enjoyed this video, share your thoughts and opinions with us in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.